Hogan. I'm Dean of the College of Performing Arts and the Musico Center for the Arts here at Chapman University in Southern California. And here at the Musico Center, we are so excited about our 10th anniversary season. And we are starting off with a bang on Friday, September 4th. We're presenting the first of three dance companies that are part of the Mirabel Musico Contemporary Dance Series. We're presenting BalletX, Philadelphia's premier contemporary dance company. BalletX is an exciting and physically exhilarating dance company that is committed to new choreography. Since its founding in 2005, BalletX has produced 150 new works by 80 choreographers. That is amazing. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with co-founder, artistic, and executive director of BalletX, Christine Cox. Christine, welcome.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for having me and for having BalletX at Chapman University. We're so thrilled.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Christine, I thought we might start out with your career as a dancer. You had a long and super impressive career, including dancing with Pennsylvania Ballet from 1993 to 2006. And God, I was looking at some of the roles you did, the Cowgirl and Agnes DeMille and Choleric in Four T's and works by Paul Taylor and Jerome Robbins. It's just so I just you tell us a bit about your career as a dancer, and also how does that inform your work today as artistic and executive director?
I was so honored to be able to make a living dancing. And I started dancing when I was 17 years old and gave up a 4-year scholarship to Temple to
Oh,
start dancing with Ballet Met in Columbus, Ohio. And I think really there began the seedlings of BalletX, because at Ballet Met, we did a lot of new work.
mhm.
And I aspired to be a ballerina and be in a big ballet company. And at Ballet Met, we did all new works, a lot of new works. And
Ah,
in the studio, while studying with a choreographer and training and building a new ballet, I had an epiphany and I realized that I was a part of something that had never been seen before, and that I was working with the choreographer to build new steps and ideas, and it just felt exhilarating. And so, fast forward, I had a 20-year professional career, 5 years with Ballet Met, a 1 year in between with two other companies. And then I joined the Pennsylvania Ballet in 1993, as you said. And that's really where it cemented my passion for ballet. And I learned so much in that incredible company, which is now called the Philadelphia Ballet.
yeah.
I had opportunities to do classic work on George Balanchine repertoire, while also working with some of the absolute most extraordinary choreographers, Agnes DeMille, and I was fortunately a part of most of the new creations. So whenever we did new ballets, I would be in them. And that same feeling of when I first started in a professional company of like, wow, this has never been seen before. It's brand new. And those premieres, those world premieres were exhilarating because you just didn't know what you had. And that stuck with me forever. And that
Mhm.
sense of adventure and doing new work, I would find opportunities to work outside of my normal contract with the Pennsylvania Ballet to build new ballets. I started choreographing myself. And anytime there was an opportunity to work with a choreographer, I raised my hand. And I said yes. So I
Wow, that's
the adventure.
yeah, no, what an amazing array of, of great choreographers and new works too. But so you retired from the stage in 2006, and you'd already started with your colleague, choreographer Matthew Neenan, in 2005, Ballet X. So I guess how did you know that it was time to kind of venture into new projects, right? Which is always a big transition for a dancer. And what inspired you and Matthew to found a company?
We were just the best of friends. And I was in Matthew's very first piece that I ever choreographed when he was
Oh,
in his early
cool.
20s. And so we had built this long trust and this willingness to just experiment and kind of break boundaries and try to be as bold as we could, in our 20s and 30s. And so that spirit of adventure just continued. And we decided to form BalletX because we had this massive hole, this whole summer off. Our contract would be from September to June, and then 3 months of we wanted to just keep creating. And so we put a show together that just grew. And when I retired, it was not easy.
Yeah.
13 years in the corps de ballet. You work so hard in the corps.
Mhm.
And if you're lucky and you're in the corps, you sometimes get to do soloists and principal roles, which I was doing. And I was 36 when I retired from that role. And I had 5 jobs teaching at different schools.
Oh, wow.
And then
Wow.
BalletX was just a little, summer show. And I really could not anticipate that I would be here 20 plus years later,
Yeah.
running the company and building with my colleagues a company that I hope will be here many, many years beyond my lifetime. Something that I think is a really important American contemporary ballet company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you find the dancers for Ballet X when you started?
In the beginning, it was my colleagues at the
Yeah.
Pennsylvania
Uh-huh.
Ballet. And we were like, let's get together. We had already an unspoken language because we were used to working together. So we were ready to just like kind of break, out of our
Yeah.
normal routine and try new things. So we had this. And then when we transitioned, I realized when I left the ballet that there was an opportunity. There was a void in Philadelphia. And in
Hmm.
fact, a bit of a void in the country of
Yeah. Yeah.
contemporary ballet, a focus on new work. What was the future of ballet looking like? Not taking into account of, telling these story ballets over and over again. Were there new stories we could tell? So I did mention to Matt, I think we need to kind of separate ourselves from the Pennsylvania Ballet and start to really build our own brand and our own
Mhm.
identity. And we started hiring dancers from New York or different places around the country. And they would come into Philadelphia, they'd sleep on our couches. We had, really no money. We were building a little company. And we found an amazing theater that partnered with us and were so generous. And then an incredible grant came in from the William Penn Foundation
Oh,
that
right.
really helped us. Okay, let's help you launch this in a next capacity. And there were peaks and valleys. The dancers we had were from so many different places. And there came a point where I thought, I don't want dancers sleeping on my couch. We need to provide a salary and a place where they can build their own life
Right.
and have their own homes. And so that my ambition for them and our artists started to grow. And I started to understand fundraising a little bit more and building something, a
Hmm.
company. And it's really been, one step in front of the next. Sometimes you go forward, 2 step backs. But I made a promise to myself, as scary as it all was, to be really
Hmm.
honest. I said, you will make mistakes and you just need to own up to them and then keep learning and growing. Keep this sense of um of open opportunity and just keep
Hmm.
doing the right thing for artists and for our community.
That's amazing. And I think where, Ballet X's, focus on the new, I mean, indelibly you're going to have mistakes. Like there's, because when you're intentionally putting yourself in a situation where you're kind of going into the unknown all the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff, I mean, it's about just communication, learning how to work with artists and choreographers. What does it mean to build a program? How do
Hmm.
you make sure that you're both everyone's on the same page?
Right.
An artist may anticipate or expect something, and you just have to make sure that we're all meeting expectations so that no one feels like they didn't understand what the goal
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
Ultimately, now, 20 plus years later, my goal is to create an environment that's inspired, that's creative, that pushes for excellence. and that we're bringing audiences along on this journey that touches their lives, that gives them moments of just connection and
Mhm.
togetherness and space for them to think about their own life and journey, which is what
That's
dance can do. It really
right.
can.
Right. That's amazing. So from there were, two things about Ballet X that really strike me as very important to kind of the essence of the company is one, accessibility, and then also this, commitment to new works. But I wanted to start with accessibility because I was reading that Ballet X's mission, or at least part of its mission, is to expand dance's vocabulary for all audiences. And so, given that your dancers are grounded in classical ballet technique, I guess I'd like to ask, why does classical technique need to be expanded? And how might that help you to reach new audiences?
I mean, ballet is incredible. It's so
Yeah,
challenging.
yeah.
I mean, for us nerdy ballet folk, it's just working on the technique, the daily meticulous
Hmm.
finessing of something that you just can't, you never master it. It's
Right.
always, and so it takes a certain type of person who wants to dive into,
Yeah.
you know, finessing and fine tuning a classical ballet technique. And what I love is when you have that refinement and that ability to really almost effortlessly move through classical ballet,
Hmm.
then to take that finely trained athlete and
Hmm.
artist and then put them with a finely developed choreographer, an artist who has a vision, and then that magic. What happens when the visionary meets the artist and they work together to build something that they didn't even think possible? So,
Hmm.
and I think ballet is for everybody. And really what I want to do is just make space for everybody to come in and say, oh, it's not what I thought it was.
Hmm.
It's like I really do connect with this art form in a way that surprise and delight me. And so I'm always, no, even if I'm in an elevator with someone I don't know, put my hand out. Hello, have you ever been to a ballet? Some of my ones
Uh-huh.
are just horrific, but
Right.
I'm just trying to find a way to invite people in so they can experience something that maybe they never thought was for them or that would
Yeah.
interest them.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you're right because I think sometimes anything, with point shoes on or whatever is perceived or can be as like elitist or just maybe like a little bit intimidating. And it's true. So many times audience come in like, I love that. That was, and but it's just like, getting them to that point. And I think that, I mean, I was reading about the amazing outreach that Ballet X does to the schools, and that's just incredible of how you're, literally bringing these beautiful, works of powerful dance to, to the community.
Yeah, we do, when we turned 10 years old. We started doing pop-ups a little bit before, but
Yeah.
I proposed that we do 10 pop-ups around Philadelphia. And
Oh,
the idea
wow.
was just really surprising our citizens walking around. Could we just be dancing ballet in the middle of a park? And can we break down, the barriers where people just gazed upon what was happening, and then what could we build a bridge for them to
Yeah.
feel like this was, oh, because sometimes it's important to bring it to your community instead
Right.
of asking people to come in. Let's bring it to them. And so that was one element. And we went into the Philadelphia school district over
Hmm.
13 years ago to build a program called Dance Exchange, inspired by Jacques D'Amboise' program in New York City called the
Oh, right.
National
Yeah.
Dance Institute.
Uh-huh.
And why I wanted to do NDI instead of a ballet program, because I really wanted to just, I think it starts with our passion for dancing.
Mhm.
right? Let's get kids moving. Let's get our, classrooms dancing together. Let's
Yeah.
build a sense of confidence and a connection to music. And let's not be self-selecting. Let's bring it
Mhm.
to the third and fourth grade. And you can't opt out because it's a part of your day. And it's been incredible. I have had parents from young boys, young girls, all different types of kids come up to me and say, I never knew my child loved dancing so
Yeah.
much.
That's really interesting.
And then to see, I've had letters written to me. I'm watching kids from programs in the past connect with kids in the schoolyard that are doing the programs, and they're talking about steps, and they're remembering their
Wow.
dances, and they're seeing dance happen in the schoolyard, which is just everything. Every
No, that's incredible. And I think it's actually increasingly important, as you see, well, everybody, we're like tied to our phones and just not as active. I hear that so much from even dance teachers. I'm working with kids and it's like they're just the importance of feeling that freedom in your body and just loving to move is so precious. And I think that, you kind of have to nurture that these days, right?
Yeah, we take it for granted. I mean,
Yeah.
every generation is changing, right? It's evolving. But that sense of just coordination, connection to
Mhm.
your body, being able to walk across an area that has rocks that are, it's just really being tuned in to yourself and how you connect with the world can be so empowering and can be uplifting. Just the simple act of moving to music
Mhm.
with your friends.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I feel joy. Who'd
Yeah.
have thought? I
Yeah.
just needed to get moving. I've been stagnant watching my phone or working, and not getting enough physical connection with my
Mm.
soul, my mind, and my body. It's really important.
That is amazing. And yes, such an important aspect of your work, I think. And so let's go back to the emphasis on new choreography. And I can see as you've touched on kind of that rush of learning new works and expanding kind of what the medium of dance can do. But what are, some of the challenges of new works? And I was also kind of thinking like for dancers, it's just, like as you were describing your own, like, wow, to be part of something new and part of the creative process is just, such an amazing opportunity, but also like constantly having to adapt to new styles and new perspectives and, sometimes 3 times on the same evening of having very different, approaches to movement. How does that all work? How do you facilitate that?
For me, it's about building relationships with choreographers, and really we're humans connecting. And when I fall in love with a choreographer, it's typically because there's a surprise element that I'm just,
Uh-huh.
oh, that was unexpected. And I love that sometimes it has doesn't look anything like ballet, but you see the
Mhm.
fluidity and you see some of the classical lines. There have been times in the 150 plus world premieres where, maybe in the first decade, programs started to look the same. I wasn't really
Yeah.
curating. I was just saying, come make a work. And then as I started to develop myself as a director, I thought, okay, I really need to be a little bit more selective and just make sure that I'm building
Mhm.
a diverse program. Because for me as an audience member, and I'm watching all the works all the time, and during the performances, I personally really like to go on this incredible array of movement. So I like to see really different programming. and see the breadth of what, these dancers can do. Dancers today can do so much.
Oh,
They
I know.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, they can
Yeah.
do classical ballet, with incredible finesse, and they can do more grounded work that is maybe more of a story that is a little bit darker. And then they can take us on a comedic journey. So I feel a responsibility to the audience and the community that we're building, that we just keep this adventure, really open. And so the audience we've been able to build is so excited about new work. It's not,
Hmm.
we don't have to program something that's going to be the hit. It's if they understand that the whole point of the company is about the adventure, creating space for artists to come and dream. And the more we all get in alignment with that dream, the stronger the works become. And through the years, we're just getting more and more ballets that it's just like, wow, this is quite a portfolio of repertory that is our legacy, and what we are opportunity to create space for artists to dream and imagine. And so
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
amazing. Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that you're right that the audience knows this is Ballet X, so I'm going to be seeing something new. And I want to come back later to the repertoire that we're doing here at the Musco
Yeah.
Center. But when we were talking about, the repertoire for that performance, I was just there was, talk about spoiled for choices. There were just so many beautiful works, but you're really good at the way that you can curate how things are going to fit into an evening so that they're almost like speaking to each other and that it's just the right, I don't know, vibe overall or something. I was really, really impressed by that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really, it's like a meal. I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
chef, and I do not cook. But it's like, how do we, when the curtain opens, we're coming from a million things. We've got we've probably had so many interactions.
Yeah.
Some of us may be frustrated because we couldn't find parking. Some of us maybe come from the most delicious meal, an actual meal. And then, so we've got so many different spaces. How do we pull the audience in? And what does that first piece feel like?
Hmm.
And it can be many different things, but I really like to, as I mentioned before, just take this journey, and there it can be really different each time. But my hope is always that when we end a program, and again, it doesn't have to be like we're ending with
Right. The big
but it
closer.
doesn't
Yeah.
hurt. It
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. I do want to leave people with joy. That
Uh-huh.
is something that I don't know. I personally want to fill people's heart with, joy, and, have them feel that they're watching a piece that surprises them, but they
Hmm.
like, oh, my toe is tapping,
Right.
while I'm watching women on point, or people moving in extraordinary ways I never thought possible.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, boy, we need more joy in this world right now. So that's just so critical. But I want to talk a bit about your dancers because I've seen them perform twice in New York City.
Mm,
And I mean, I was just blown away by how fearless they are and just like that, physical virtuosity.
mhm,
But I think that when you're looking, for dancers for Ballet X, and given, the huge amount of new works that they're going to be doing, like what qualities are you looking for in a dancer that, and as you say, there's amazing dancers, but what's the type of dancer that's going to excel in the type of work that Ballet X is doing?
mm. I think someone that really leans forward in life and has a sense of curiosity,
Hmm.
passion, a deep commitment to themselves and their own growth, that isn't afraid to dive in and be vulnerable.
Hmm.
I love a dancer. They don't always have to have, 10 years of ballet experience.
Hmm.
I've tried all types of artists to collaborate with.
Mhm.
But we are Ballet X, and so it is really important to start where you do have a passion for ballet, because that's
Yeah.
how we begin our day. That's where our technique and freedom happens. And then they take our classical ballet class, and then we go into the new work. So there, an artist, a dancer who's willing to be vulnerable, peel their skin, and shape and color the works, because they are the body of the work. The
Mm.
choreographer can give them the steps, but our dancers are the picture that's being painted. And so they really are everything,
Yeah.
and so ultimately my hope is to build a community of dancers, artists that trust each other, that
Mm.
support each other, that love each other, and that are willing to be really vulnerable with one another, so that we can bring that vulnerability to our performances. We can't touch an audience if we have walls up.
Right.
You may not realize it, but you will feel it. You won't be able to connect with
Mm.
an artist who has a wall up. And as this word gets thrown around, authentic self, that gets, it's so a little overused. I want to be authentic. Well, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
but so creating an environment where dancers feel they can be themselves. I really like bringing together really individuals who can move as one, but they're really true to themselves, and yeah, are excited about new work.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I really noticed that in watching your dancers, like their individual personalities really come across. Obviously working as a group and kind of that cohesiveness with them. But yeah, they're really just really bold and unique performers, I think. And and how amazing for them to be part of, so many creative processes. And yeah. But so in thinking about your dancers, let's talk about dance training because I think, so much has changed since the time of, when you were training or I were training. I mean, in my day, you'd probably would have, been fired if you so much as went to a gym and lifted a weight, if you were right. I mean, it's so I'm interested to hear what you think are some of the, more important and helpful approaches to training for professional dancers and kind of beyond ballet class, as you mentioned, they start every day with ballet class, but what beyond ballet class would you want to encourage your dancers to do?
Hmm. I think it's so important because I did it for a good second half of my career, the cross training. So
Yeah.
meaning just getting, because the more information, the more signals in your body that can fire and understand different elements of being a living, breathing human being, the stronger you are as a dancer. So
Mm.
cross training, not meaning like you could do CrossFit, but making sure your cardiovascular health is really solid.
Right.
A lot of times when you're creating new ballets, you're doing little short bits of a piece, and you're doing it for 3 weeks, and then suddenly you're running a 20-30 minute ballet,
Yeah.
not had a lot of time. You've been 3 weeks just doing short little
Hmm.
spurts. So really approaching work as if you're an athlete. You are athletes. And that sense of, you may be exhausted after an 8 hour of dancing, but maybe giving yourself an hour to do yoga, or an hour to do
Yeah.
cardio, or an hour to do weightlifting, so that you can keep your muscles strong. And, as I keep saying, sorry, we don't know. We use the same muscles over and over again,
Yeah.
and it's important to also train the opposite muscle to the one that's getting fired regularly, because you can get injuries when you're constantly putting the
Yeah.
pressure on maybe the front half of your body. So you may need to do hamstring work or glute work, or develop your calves. You might be getting shin splints, just really approaching your development as an athlete. And I've had some dancers who didn't do work in the gym for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then they just started and they're like, oh
Uh-huh.
my goodness, this is incredible.
Really,
I'm
they really felt the
feeling,
difference.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
feeling really the difference. I had to train because I just needed to stretch more. I needed to work on my cardio health, and I needed to strength. I was strong, but I needed to lengthen my muscles. I was a mesomorph, so I was really kind of a little bit stockier. I needed to kind of try to find the length, and I would
Mm,
do Pilates before my work at the Pennsylvania Ballet, and I did that once a week for like 12 years, and it
wow.
changed how I used my muscles because I was overusing certain muscles and I needed to calm those things down and use
Hmm.
other muscles. Because when you
That's
start
really
to,
interesting.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And I think it's at a certain point of, when a dancer, a professional dancer would at that level kind of know their body and know what they need. And now there's so many, different, as you say, types of training, whether it's cross training or Pilates or yoga or whatever. But yeah, I guess there's more of that sense of personal responsibility for making sure that you're, you know, uh, that you can do all of those different types of movement that you're doing at BalletX.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a competitive environment, right? And when you
Yes.
think of athletes, the ones who are, you can get the pro contract, then what are you going to do once you're on the team?
Right.
Right, because you have the next level coming up and they're coming up quicker, stronger, faster. You
Hmm.
can't get in these contracts and just ride the wave, especially if you're an ambitious organization and you want to keep growing and evolving and feeling free in your movement. You
Yeah.
do need to train like an athlete. So it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard work.
It is because there's the athletic part of it, but then the artistic part of it too. So it's like of and making and I think, as we were saying, like dancers today, their technical capacity is like, whoa. But I think it's that, like I was saying, the unique personalities of your dancers that come out and whatever. So it's like that's a part of it, but they need the whole package, right? Of that artistic and very well, I love what you said about how your dancers have to be vulnerable in order to be doing, so much of this new work all the time. That's just yeah, it's an incredible company. And one thing that I think is really interesting about Ballet X, I've noticed that when you have performances, you start each piece with a short film that kind of, gives a little of the pre-context of the creative process, so the audience can, see the choreographer working. And I wanted to ask you about that because, what do you think that really brings to the audience? And also, do you think that audiences now kind of expect more of that additional context?
Interesting. Well, that came out of the pandemic, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
Yeah, makes sense.
yeah, it was not a part of our strategy to
Hmm.
make it more impactful, the experience. When the pandemic happened, I think we all learned a lot about ourselves and discovered new things. And I did not want the dancers to stop working. And it
Hmm.
was really important to me that we find a way to row through this storm or,
Right.
sail through it or get through the storm. And we were going to the Guggenheim Works in Process, and
Oh, right.
we had to cancel the performance. And they approached me and said, well, would you consider doing a mini film? And
Hmm.
could you? And so I said, okay, because I like to say yes whenever possible. And we made 4 short films. And then we had that summer 3 world premieres scheduled. And obviously, nothing was opening up anytime soon. So we made those world premiere ballets into films. They were 20 and 25
Oh.
minute films, and everybody worked at home. We did the work on Zoom, and the choreographers created in their homes on Zoom. So when we all finally started to get back into the theater and we were commissioning work for the stage, funny enough, the works were shorter. Choreographers were making 12 and 14-minute pieces instead of 20 and 25.
Really? Huh.
So I was putting on a program that was only about 40 minutes long. And I thought, oh, I can't ask people to come in for a 40-minute program that's normally 2 hours. So we were making these mini documentaries, and I thought, well, let's just play the mini documentary in front of the piece and they can learn more about the work. And slowly but surely, we just kept doing it. And so
Hmm.
now, about 5 years later, we have these incredible assets that
Yeah.
are gateways into the choreographer's vision. And you can hear straight from the choreographer what they're intending to do in their process. And we have an extraordinary filmmaker, Daniel Madoff, who was a dancer in Merce Cunningham. So he
Yeah.
understands dance timing, rhythm
Mhm.
of filming, and makes fantastic 5-minute documentaries that give the audience a way in. And, you know,
Mhm.
I think it's great. I love watching them. I love watching audiences. Just, it's like a way to peel back the curtain and then it opens. And then
Oh, yeah. I
it
love that.
really changes the experience for everybody. And
Yeah.
I love it. They fall in love with the choreographer and then they fall in love with the company and then the piece. And it's just so exhilarating.
Yeah, it's interesting of that, horrible COVID experience, but I guess a few positive things came out of it that we can hang on to, right? Of the yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really curious about the films that we'll be seeing at the Musco, that kind of in front of the pieces. But well, let's talk about the repertoire that we finally landed on for Friday, September 4th. And we're starting out with Scales on the Wings of a Butterfly by Nicole Kaiser. So what can you kind of tell our audience in anticipation of that?
So Nicole was our choreographic fellow that year, and
Uh,
actually, we'll jump to it. But the third piece on the program by Margaret Dunlin, what she was the mentor. So you're seeing,
oh,
funny
really?
enough, I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So over a decade ago, we launched a program where we would work with emerging choreographers and pair them with a choreographic mentor. So
Uh-huh.
they could build a relationship, we could build dialogue around making ballets. And it was a way for experienced choreographers and emerging to really talk about work because a lot in our field, choreographers, they make ballets, they're by themselves, and there's
Hmm.
very little conversation about what their goal is or their intention. And in the theater world, there's editing, there's discussion, there's scripts, it's changes, there's a real sense of evolution. And so I'm hoping, my hope was to bring that open dialogue so that we could just talk as a field.
That's a fantastic project. I mean, because yeah, it really can be kind of a lonely process, huh?
And
Yeah.
Nicole won the fellowship out of over, I think that year, 100 applicants.
Wow.
And we narrowed down to 10, and she was number one. And Nicole came with this brilliant idea that she wanted to focus in on the scales on the wings of a butterfly and just the pulse of what happens, the what happens, that really
Huh.
microscopic view. And she created like in the ballet world, or how you use your hands is really important. You take it for
Hmm.
granted when you just don't even really think about it. She made the ends of the dancer's hands really specific. So they
Hmm.
have to the entire time use their hands in this very specific way. And I really had no expectations. She was our choreographic fellow. I was like, oh, this will be lovely. I like this idea. Is she going to be able to, where are we going with this? You never
Yeah.
know. And when we premiered the piece, you heard the audience gasp, from the very first image. And fine, you can have a great first image, but can you have a piece that
Yeah.
that dissolves out of that incredible image and then keeps you engaged,
Hmm.
keeps you as an audience member leaning forward and going, oh, I'm curious. Where's this going to go? How does this conclude? Oh, okay. So it's just fantastic piece. She did
Yeah.
a really great job. And then, I just love the work. I love that that
Yeah.
was her first time making a piece on point. She had never done a piece on
Are you
point.
kidding me? She had never made a
Yeah.
piece on. Wow, wow. I mean, it's a
I was like,
beautiful work. Of course,
oh,
I've only seen it on, video, so I'm really excited to see it.
yeah.
That's amazing that
Yes.
she hadn't
Yes.
choreographed on point before. Wow.
And I
Wow.
often encourage choreographers who are in that emerging role, because we'll get a lot of European choreographers applying to the fellowship or simply sending emails of interest, but they will not have made work on point. And I just say, we'll use our company as an opportunity to take a go
Hmm.
at making a work on point. The audience may not know who's listening, but the point shoe is challenging and it can feel
Right.
a bit like a barrier,
Right.
particularly if you've never worn point shoes.
Yeah.
And so I just say, take a go,
Yeah.
try
That
it.
is so cool. But what's interesting is the next piece, Become a Mountain by Justin Pack. And of course, he's New York City ballet dancer, choreographer, like, that and they're wearing sneakers in that
You're
piece.
wearing sneakers.
So sort
Isn't
of
it
like the opposite.
interesting? Yeah. So because he makes work, I mean, he's around that classical ballet dancer. So I can't speak for Justin, but I would imagine there was a real intention in putting the dancers in
Mhm.
sneakers, that he was pushing himself for something different, pushing the dancers for something different. So this piece with composition by Dan Deacon, choreography by Justin Peck, I went to Juilliard to watch one of my former dancers. She was choreographing on the students of Juilliard, and she did an incredible job, Kylie Kwan. But I fell in love with Justin Peck's Become a Mountain.
Yeah.
And I immediately wrote him and said, is there any way you could take this performance and we could bring it on to BalletX? And we started building a friendship, and he said yes. And we've performed this piece on many of our tours. It
Mhm.
just ignites your heart. There's something about it that just feels so American and
Mhm.
unique and fresh. This was like the class after COVID. So they were
Oh,
the
really?
seniors. It was the senior class. And they had this sense, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it,
Yeah.
of just like he created something that pushed them to
Uh-huh.
imagine their future. And it drives forward. And the dancers are walking towards the audience in this sense of like, we're going to, push out west.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to
yeah,
seek
yeah.
new frontier. I love it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a big, it just feels like big, that
Yeah.
mountain scale. But then we're finishing with going back to Marguerite Donlin and Big Wig.
Mm.
I saw, your dancers do at a showcase in New York. Oh my God, what a beautiful, charming, witty piece. Tell us a little bit about Big Wig.
Yeah. You never know what you have. And creating it, Marguerite was in a challenging position because we were bringing dancers in and out of the process, and
Yeah,
that was unusual. It was not an ideal circumstance for Marguerite because she needed her cast there the whole time, and I can't remember what it was, but she was such a champ and so extraordinary in just dealing with the rehearsal timing challenges. And then you couldn't quite see the vision, but she's a pro. I mean, she's run her own ballet company.
yeah,
She's made so many works around the world. And the piece came and the curtain went up, and it just was like, whoa, wow. I love this work.
yeah,
And being able to see something, oh, because I see it over and over again. We tour it or we bring it back, and it always feels fresh and new. I never feel like, ooh, I hope this section goes quicker. It's just stunning. I love it. And
yeah.
it's you know, she was wanted to do something about her Irish
Hmm.
background and learning step dancing when she was a young girl, that then moved into ballet and then contemporary
Hmm.
movement and choreography. So it's a little autobiographical in the sense on a physical
Yeah.
depiction of someone's story, starting with the curls. And what does it mean to come from a very strict type of dance form? And how do you break out of it? And there's
Hmm.
parallels to that in the ballet world. So, but she looks at it through the microscope of Irish step dancing
Hmm.
and through point shoes. it's, it's
It's an
wonderful.
amazing piece. Yeah, I'm so excited to see that again. And then, as I said, the other works I've only seen on videos. So, like our audience here, we're really excited. And you had mentioned, the importance of joy, but I just wanted to, to end by asking you, how do you want our audience to feel when they leave the Musco Center after seeing Ballet X?
Mm. I I would hope that they feel a sense of um, love and connection and
Mhm.
colorful creativity pulsing through their body. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
feel that we all get enough chance to just sit back and experience a really physical art form.
Hmm.
It's not only just dance, but it's composition, it's music, it's lighting, it's costume design. So there's so much love that goes into the different works that the audience will experience. And so ultimately, for me, it's about this shared dynamic. And
Mm.
the audience is as much a part of that performance as the dancers are,
Yeah,
and everybody
absolutely.
around. And long time ago, not a long time ago, but you build a company. What's your vision? These are big,
Hmm.
bold, crazy. What are you doing? And I'm thinking, why am I driven to do this? What is the whole
Uh-huh.
point of life? And why am I, pushing so hard for this? And, our vision is to create extraordinary dance experiences that inspire human connection.
Mm.
That sounds like some fancy consultant wrote that, but that wasn't. That was me with my team talking about what's the point of all this. And it's about
Mm.
human connection. It's about someone from your community coming with maybe their father or their mother or their cousin or the grandmother, and maybe they're holding hands. Maybe it's a couple that hasn't been having the best time, but they're able to relax and just let all of the worries of life kind of slip away. And that this music stimulates something in them, maybe more empathy for one another, more
Hmm.
kindness towards each other. We're all going so fast and hard and at a
Yeah.
furious pace. And the art of connection is a real thing.
It
And
is. I mean, and I think that's so important to what our art form can be, that you turn the phones off, go into a theater and just like allow yourself to, to feel that and to be immersed in the work. And, I just wanted to mention too that one other aspect of the connection is that as part of the Maribel Musco Contemporary Dance Series, we also have the companies working with our amazing students in the Department of Dance. So they're all really excited about the master classes they're going to have and being able to work with the company. So it's just going to be a really wonderful experience. And we're so happy that we're starting off the series with Ballet X, bringing some of that Philly energy to the West Coast.
I love it.
It's going to be great. But
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Christine.
Oh,
It was fantastic to hear your insights about the company. So
thank you
yeah.
for believing in us, and thank you for bringing us to your community and for what you're doing for dance and for Chapman University and the arts. It really matters.